friends, it's Evelyn here. Welcome back to the channel. And yes, hell has not actually frozen over, my friends. I am outside, as you might be able to see, and no doubt here I'm much more like myself this week, feeling very, very lucky and grateful for healing and feeling better. My facial swelling has gone down quite a lot, and my impetigo breakout has almost healed. Now, full disclosure and honesty here, my friends, I know how supportive this community is, and I know that none of you would have minded seeing me on video like that, but I really did not feel like myself. But I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you for supporting and loving me no matter what. So, the creating on this channel, my friends, let's get back to some of that. This week we're creating the final item in that vintage inspired capsule nightwear wardrobe. So excited about this, using the last of that velvet, and I'm really hoping we're going to be able to get a floor length skirt out of this. Cross your fingers, my friends. We're going to be making the robe, also known as a dressing gown or a housecoat. So without further ado, grab yourself a cuppa, keep that smile on your face, and let's get to some creating. Do you know, it's actually just started raining here, but it's really, really beautiful. And I'm so lucky to have woods that start less than 30 meters away from my front door. It's a great, great thing. And it's another great thing about having a beagle. Luna's walking just behind me there. It's great because it means I really do have to get out of the house. And even on my really bad days when I can't walk with her and Phil, I can still get out of the house and sit and watch them. It's the little things, my friends. I'll take some video actually and show you this gorgeous landscape. But anyway, I digress as usual. Let's get to some sewing. Come on. Luna! Hello! Oh, I love you, baby girl. Hey, Luna! Beagles and sniffing. Oh, that rain is really starting to come down now. Hello, monkey. Hello. Hi, darling. Such a good girl. Now, this woodland might look pretty bare right now, my friends, but in just a few weeks, come springtime, it will be an absolutely stunning wash of green with so much birdsong, and personally, I cannot wait for that. But on to that robe. After poring over many vintage designs and images for inspiration and falling in love with 30s and 40s styles in particular, I settled with this design. A robe with a full-length skirt, with a bodice that overlaps at centre front, full-length sleeves and a curved collar. And then, while sorting through my pattern stash, my friends, I found this, which only cemented my love of this design and made me feel even more excited to get creating. So let's get to that drafting, my friends, and it's a nice easy project to draft today, for which we're going to grab our jersey bodice and sleeve block, and the skirt pattern that we drafted for last week's nightgown. Yes, there's cards above and links in the description box. Let's start with the back, grabbing both the back bodice and back skirt pieces. Mine seen here featuring a cameo performance by Luna's Feats. Begin by lining up the two pieces along the waistline, and where there's any discrepancy, add the excess to the smaller pattern piece along that waistline so that the two match up. Seen here on my bodice piece, tapering up to the top of the side seam in yellow pen. As you can see, I've also lowered the arm side here for a looser fit on this robe, coming down by 3/4 of an inch and curving this new point up into the armhole curve. Grabbing the front pieces, repeat the same process with those pieces too. Now, because I lowered the arm side on the bodice pieces, I'm grabbing a measuring tape and measuring the armhole curves before grabbing my sleeve pattern to check that the front and back armhole curves together are just 1 inch more than the measurement of my sleeve cap. Why 1 inch more, I might hear you ask? Well, that's because, my friends, our sleeves only have one seam, whereas our bodices have two, the side and the shoulder. Dropping the arm side tends to increase the armhole on bodice pieces, so that's why I'm measuring here, my friends. And an increase would then need to be added to the sleeve piece to be sure that the two pieces will seam together nicely. I needed to add approximately 1 inch to my sleeve cap, so I did this evenly on both sides, as you can see here in that yellow pen once again. And I kept the extra width all the way to the wrist edge of the sleeve to create a looser fitting sleeve for the robe. I also added 1 inch to the wrist edge of the sleeve to be doubly sure that it's long enough. You can always hem it a little bit more, but you can't add fabric, my friends, so it's always better to be too long than too short. So now that our bodice pieces are adapted for the design, it's time to work on the crossover front. Grab your adapted front bodice piece and trace a mirror image of it so that you technically have a full front bodice like this one. Next, it's time to draw the style line for the cross front design. To do this, I started by coming in from the left inner edge of the shoulder by 1 inch and curving a line downwards to the lower edge of the right side, like the line seen here in yellow. Now, when I drew this style line, I then started to think back to the design and the inspiration behind it, realising that, in fact, the crossover did not go all the way to the side seam, as my current style line does. So, grabbing that front piece once more, I made a mark halfway between the centre front and the right side, redrawing the style line to hit this point. Much better. Since I shortened the shoulder seam on the front bodice, I need to match the back bodice up. So lining the two up together, I'm redrawing that back neckline here in orange. Keeping that orange pen going, I then drew in the desired collar design, which I can then trace to form the collar pattern piece. Skirt front now and the overlap. Having created a bodice overlap of half the waistline width, I'm doing the same for the skirt, dividing the pattern piece into two halfway along the waistline before tracing a mirrored centre front half and adding it to the pattern piece to create the overlap. And what a strange looking skirt piece we now have. Walk the waistline of your front skirt and front bodice pieces to ensure that they match up. And believe it or not, friends, that's the pattern drafting done. Here are our finished pieces. Remember to add those seam allowances, friends. Time to get sewing, beginning by cutting out all those pattern pieces. Starting with constructing the skirt, I'm sewing the side seams using a 3.5mm long straight stitch, which I will use throughout the project. A top tip for velvet fabric and other fabrics that might slip when sewing: take care, my friends, and sew slowly, being careful not to pull and stretch the fabric while sewing so that seams do not pucker. A walking foot would also be helpful here. Then onto that bodice, starting with the shoulder and side seams, then constructing the sleeves, before inserting them into the bodice. Collar time, beginning by sewing the centre back seams on both my inner and outer collar pieces. I had to create a centre back seam on my collar because I was running quite low on fabric by this point. I still can't quite believe that I managed to squeeze out a full length skirt. It's the little things, friends. Then the two collar pieces are placed right sides together and stitched all along the outer edge to form the collar. Before that collar is pinned all around the outer edge of the bodice. Now this looks and feels a little strange because you're going to pin it wrong side of collar facing right side of bodice, and it's going to feel a little wrong, but my friends, trust the process. Collar now attached, it's time to deal with that raw edge by pushing the seam allowances to the inside of the garment and top stitching them in place. This effectively has an understitching effect, rolling the raw edge to the inside of the robe so it won't be seen. It also gives a rather pretty top stitch effect, although you won't see it because the collar will hide it, but I know it's there and it's pretty. Next, it's time to attach the bodice and skirt together all along the waistline. And so that everything matches up nicely and is neatly finished, I'm effectively hemming the front edges of the skirt first, folding the seam allowances to the inside and top stitching in place, before pinning and then sewing that waistline seam. Then it was finally time for buttons and buttonholes, and I went for these gorgeous pink buttons from my vintage button stash. My new Netchi sewing machine has one-step buttonholes, and I'm still pretty in awe of its incredible powers. Definitely the little things. All that was left was to hem those sleeves and what seemed like a mile of skirt hem. Reveal time. Phew. So my friends, I did it. I created a vintage inspired nightwear capsule wardrobe from 8 meters of matte velvet. And I did it. Managed to squeeze out a full length robe as well. So happy about how these projects have turned out. This robe, the nightgown from last week, and the pyjamas from the week before. Yes, my friends, you've guessed it, there are links in the description box if you would like to make any of those other projects. But until next week, I'm going to get a very, very well-earned cuppa. You should see how much of this fabric I've got left. It's probably about this big. Love a bit of fabric Tetris, who doesn't? But until next week, my friends, take care, stay safe, bye. Sorry, Lena, you can go to sleep now. I'm in the doghouse.